Last year we were introduced to Scratch. It's a programming software where you can manipulate characters to do something that you'd like them to do.
And this is a Picoboard, and it's just basically several different switches that can control the characters on the screen. Like this is a sliding bar, you can plug in different values to move the sprite back and forth across the screen, and this is a push to make switch, and then it also has a sensor that's sensitive to sound and touch.
It also has 4 inputs where you could put a push to make button.
Or you could plug like your own inputs in and like make anything you want to do. Like you can make a motion sensor, you could plug it into here. And when you moved your hand across the motion sensor, you can move the person 10 steps or whatever you want.
So we knew Scratch had 4 inputs on the Picoboard, so we decided to make our own controller which would have the 4 inputs included.
So we started to test around like what would be the most comfortable for like a controller for your hands, and we had to cut out this, which would give us enough room for the wiring and room for the inputs that we could control the guys in Scratch.
After many prototypes and designs, we finally had a controller with 4 inputs that we could plug into the Picoboard. And there's a analog stick and 2 buttons, so take up the 4 inputs right here.
And one of our classmates, Mike Van Thiel, made the game Space Invaders, and we actually programmed that game to work for this, so you can move the spaceship and shoot with these buttons. It was pretty cool.
Beginning of this year, we tried to manipulate this controller to work with many different games. The downfall is that the Picoboard only had 4 inputs. So we played around with a few things to try to find out what would be able to give us the unlimited amount of inputs that we needed. So we started playing around with keyboards. The fact is that a keyboard is just a giant push-to-make switch. So, after ripping into one of these keyboards, we found out what we needed. We found the microcontroller of the keyboard. How this works is that it has many positives right here. These positives have many different keyboard controls. And this, say the first positive, could go to any one of these negatives and make a different thing. This one positive could make A, B, C, D, E, F, G if it needed to. Once I ripped this out of the keyboard, I had to find out what each one of these did. So, I took a wire and went from each positive to each negative and found out exactly what each one did. After I was able to find out exactly what each input did, I was able to make this, a mock-up controller. And the lifeline for this controller is, of course, the keyboard, microcontroller, wired up so that each one of these buttons have a different purpose.
After realizing that we can use a keyboard to give us many more inputs for the game Scratch, we decided making an arcade center.
This was our first attempt at the arcade center. You can see that we cut out a spot for the screen right here. It'd be a flat panel screen. It'd be sunken in, and there'd be plexiglass over the top. This is just our prototype. It's made out of foam and cardboard. And then here's our controllers, which would use up some inputs and 2 buttons. And then after we made this, we could see how cool and how awesome this could be. So we decided to just scratch that and either make a bigger, more high-tech version of this, even maybe a 2-player game. And this is when we decided to make it this design, and this took us a while to come up with the dimensions and what we wanted. And then here's a drawing on
Of the structure of the arcade center. And this would be like a 2-player game center where the screens would be standing up like this, as if it was like a battleship game.
And then there'd be 2 screens back-to-back mounted, so one player could sit here, one player could sit here, and they could play head-to-head games.
And we made it so that a person can sit underneath. And we'll have wheels underneath, so this will be a portable game console. And it offers you more room to put your hands and rest to play your games than our previous model.
Hey, this is our updated arcade center. And as you can see, we have the 4 buttons here, and then 2 right here for start and select for our game. And then we're going to hook those up to keyboard inputs to control certain things on the screen. And then we're hook this up to the Picoboard to control the sprite, his actions on the screen. And you can see the wiring, how we hooked it up to the keyboard. And also we're going to have this exact mirrored image on the other side of the game, and then back-to-back computer screens, so we can have 2-player games and you can play against each other.
After our prototype, we made this frame out of steel. We grinded it off to paint it, and now the next step is to put on the sides, and then we'll wire everything up from there.